evening. I am Judith Clark. Jim Doherty and I welcome you to our 2025 Oratorical Contest. We are so proud for you to see what our students have accomplished. This is a multi-week project in which students work through a structured research process by deciding a topic, selecting a variety of sources, and preparing a fully cited essay in the style of a speech. The students here tonight were chosen by their peers as the most successful speakers and speeches in their classes. Their work shows a dedication to quality and passion for their topics, and while these finalists were chosen, they were not the only high-quality speeches of the year. Each of our students deserves recognition for their work and the courage it takes to present a polished speech to their peers. Introducing today's speeches will be 8th graders Ava Green and Lucy Grody, and we thank them for taking the time to help us out with this event.
Hello. Filing in a moment is the Hampton Rotary Club, and we are really grateful to welcome them back to judge once again in what has become really a long-standing tradition here at Hampton Academy. So when they come in, if you guys can give them a round of applause, they'll be walking through here in a moment. So I will introduce them when they get here. Would also like to recognize our colleagues Diane McCain and Caleb Shaw, two teachers who came in and they're taking their time to be our talliers, so thank you guys. Thank you also to Jack Hafey up in the booth for returning to us this evening to offer his help with sound and cameras, so thank you, Jack, up there. Thank you to our principal, Dr. Neil Campbell, for being here tonight and his continued support throughout the project. Our Rotarians are coming in now, so I will introduce them. Our judges are Joan Carell, Penny Jeff, Jeffrey Merrill, Sherry Rand, and Paul Rothman. And finally, thank you to everyone for your support tonight. This event would not be possible without your continued support. So thank you to the community for coming out. Oh, we would also like to memorize, I'm sorry, I get this a little out of order here. Our former Hampton Academy colleague, Lori Cotter, who began this event, will also offer her expertise as a judge. So thank you, Lori. The speeches today will be recorded and posted on the Hampton Academy YouTube channel. The speakers will be judged based on their subject matter, voice quality, and body language. The speaking order was chosen randomly, and there will be one 10-minute intermission. Once again, welcome to the 2025 Hampton Academy Oratorical Contest, and enjoy the speeches.
Welcome, everyone. Our first speaker is Sienna Rush with a speech entitled, "Are Mistakes Just a Part of Life?"
When I was a little girl, I made a lot of mistakes just like every kid my age. I remember one time I was baking a cake with my mom. I had accidentally cracked the eggshell and got it into the cake batter. My mom told me, "It's okay, you'll learn from your mistakes." This phrase is said a lot, but I still made the same mistake. Now, I want to prevent getting the eggshells in the batter. I cracked the egg in a separate bowl before adding it to the rest. Of course, that mistake is an easy fix, but others are not. Mistakes can lead to valuable lessons, but they often are viewed as negative, but it can be beneficial for personal growth. If you're not responsible for your mistakes, they can lead you down the wrong path. When making decisions in life and inevitably making mistakes, you shouldn't just try to recover from them, and instead think about preventing them in the first place. Using strategies can help you, as well as preventing them. Making mistakes is something that everyone does. Mistakes are caused by your thinking process. The brain processes so much information every day. Stephen Chase, a professor at Carnegie Mellon University, says our brains are constantly trying to predict how the world works. Brains predict using past experiences, but those can lead to mistakes when they aren't relevant. Teenagers are prone to fatigue and stress, which can also lead to mistakes as well. They could experience this because of academic and social pressures, family conflict, and insecurity. A survey done by the American Psychology Association shows that on a 10-point scale, teenagers' stress level goes from a 3 to a 6 during school months. Stress also triggers the brain's fight or flight response, causing it to make quick decisions. An area in your brain that functions reasoning and planning, called prefrontal cortex, becomes less active when experiencing stress. Fatigue causes an area in your brain that functions attention and emotion, called the anterior cingulate cortex, to shut down. The National Safety Council estimates that 300,000 car crashes happen annually due to fatigue. When you're fatigued, you're in danger and you're not in your right mind. The professionals at Johns Hopkins Medicine say that staying less stressed and getting 8 hours of sleep every night will help you. While understanding why we make mistakes is important, the next step is preventing them when you can. Strategies can help limit most mistakes. A thinking process identified in the 1950s by Amo Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, two psychologists, is called heuristics. The heuristics definition by Oxford Languages is a mental shortcut to think unconsciously about your decision and think of the easiest and quickest outcome. While using heuristics is risky during important situations, they can be helpful for quick and everyday life decisions, like deciding which shoe to tie first, or deciding if you want to drink water or lemonade. On the other hand, rational thinking is gathering all the information and thinking of all the outcomes and trying to pick the best one. The official definition by the American Psychology Association is rational thinking is the ability to consider, access, organize, and analyze relevant information and arrive at a systematic conclusion. An example of using rational thinking is to help you when you're buying something. When you're buying something that you want, you might be tempted to buy it right away. But if you use rational thinking and think of the pros and cons and the prices, you can figure out that maybe spending money on it later to buy things you need instead of buying things you want. Before you can start preventing your mistakes, you need to fix the ones you've already made. Fixing mistakes is like cleaning up a spilled drink. It's messy at first, but taking responsibility and cleaning it up makes it better. You need to be able to acknowledge the mistake without letting pride or fear get in the way. Accountability and responsibility is important, especially in a physical situation. Ignoring a mistake will only create a bigger issue. Fixing your mistake might include apologizing or preventing a reoccurrence with strategies. In the future, don't avoid situations where you might be inclined to make a mistake, because after a while, you'll be able to fix mistakes effectively. But you may not be able to fix all mistakes. Responsibility and making better decisions in the future is possible. Another way to fix a mistake is addressing the consequences. For example, if you get a bad grade because you made the mistake of not studying enough, you can study for the retake and try to get a better grade. To prevent that mistake from happening again, study for the next test and try to get a good grade on the first try. Unfortunately, despite your best efforts, mistakes will inevitably happen even when you're trying to prevent them. Acknowledge them, fix them, and move forward. Making mistakes can lead to personal growth, but long-term success is meant by preventing it. Everyone makes mistakes, and at times it can be unavoidable, but it is important to approach crucial decision-making with a proactive mindset. For past mistakes, you have to acknowledge it and go forward with the corrective solution. For the future, strategize, think rationally. Ultimately, the key to long-term success is to prevent mistakes, but not to avoid them. Bill Ackman, an American billionaire, once said, experience is making mistakes and learning from them. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lily Bassett with a speech entitled Peer Pressure.
Mike smoked his first cigarette at age 11. Most children are playing outside and enjoying their childhood at age 11, but Mike couldn't. He had already rocketed past the joys of being a kid. He didn't want to, but his friends all did it, and now he's addicted. A steep price to pay to convince his friends he was cool. At only the age of 11, he had already set himself up for a life of addiction and suffering. While it is true that teens all over deal with pressures from friends and family that may influence them into doing things they might regret forever, it is a misconception to assume that peer pressure only affects teenagers. Peer pressure can be defined by the Oxford Dictionary as influence from members of one's peer group. The key word in this definition is peer. A peer is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as a person of similar age to another. Keeping this in mind, one can conclude that peer pressure lasts longer than the teen years. The lasting impact of peer pressure is different depending on the age group affected, but not all is lost. There are many tools and coping mechanisms to deal with peer pressure. All ages encounter peer pressure in various aspects of their lives. This can include social media, the workplace, and interactions with friends. Influencers are a group of people who promote products online for a living. Often, though, these are not real reviews, and people will buy things based on who is promoting them. Influencers are paid by companies to promote these products. Some influencers promote items like clothing, while others promote dangerous activities like vaping. The lifestyle that these influencers appear to live can be unrealistic, and this can make people online feel pressured to live their lives like influencers. These posts are only a small look at what is really going on behind the scenes. In an article published by the AEA Institute, it is made clear that platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and Facebook present carefully curated versions of how people live, providing highlights, achievements, and exciting experiences. This can make all ages of people think that their life isn't what it should be. Adults can be just as much, if not more, influenced by peer pressure, with new responsibilities. But peer pressure can look different depending on the age group affected. Most people are familiar with examples of teens making bad decisions like drinking or smoking, but all ages react differently to peer pressure. It is common that teens encounter peer pressure. They can experience at school, online, or really anywhere. Often younger people have a harder time recognizing that they are being manipulated by these pressure, but this doesn't mean that adults aren't affected by it. A study done by UT Dallas researched peer pressure and its impact on young adults. They said that these results indicate that resistance to social conformity pressures grow across the adult lifespan. While the adult brain has more ability to recognize when they are pressured into a trend or product, they are not immune to this pressure, even though it appears so due to more advanced coping skills. There are many types of peer pressure that many struggle with. The four main types of peer pressure are direct, indirect, spoken, and unspoken. It is important to know ways to avoid all of the types of peer pressure. The best way to avoid direct peer pressure, which are on-the-spot decisions that are often in person, is to directly say no. This can be hard because of the fear of not fitting in, but is essential to know your own boundaries. Using indirect peer pressure that is more subtle and less upfront can be more difficult. This is prevented by remembering your personal boundaries and sticking to them. This relates to finding friends that influence you the right way. Emma Huddleston, an American author, once said, "A strong-willed friend can help you develop discipline and self-control." This displays how the right kind of influence can be a good thing to have around. Spoken peer pressure is when someone outright speaks to you, pressuring you into something, which can be avoided by surrounding yourself with the right influences. Lastly, the fourth type of peer pressure, unspoken peer pressure, can be avoided by breaks from things that you notice influence you easily. This could be social media or a certain group of friends. Everyone is affected by peer pressure. This is important to know so that it is recognized in all ages. Teens and children shouldn't have to feel alone in experiencing peer pressure. Frederica Matthews Green once said, "People just don't realize how much peer pressure, the desire for peer acclamation, influences them." This quote displays how good people are at hiding what they are truly feeling. It's important to know ways to refuse all types of these pressures so that no other 11-year-old boys, or anyone for that matter, deals with the trauma Mike experienced firsthand.
Our next speaker is Avery Austin with a speech entitled "The Hard Truth About Grief."
Good evening. The death of someone we love cracks us open, big time. It's supposed to. This is how author Tom Zuba describes grief in his book, Permission to Mourn. And to be honest, I think he's pretty spot on. My brother was diagnosed with cancer at just 5 years old, and the doctors told him he only had 9 months to live. But he ended up living for 3 more years. Everyone's probably thinking, "Oh, you're so lucky, you got to spend so much more time with him." However, time flew by, and he was gone before I could understand what had just happened. People had told me I would begin grieving, But at the time, I didn't understand what grief was. Because what is grief? And what is the hardest part about grief? Now that I'm older, I have found some answers. Grief is the deep sorrow loss we feel after the death of a loved one. In other words, Joanne Cacciatore describes it as love with no place to go. There are many hard things about grief, and most people can't begin to understand the first. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you do understand, because everybody has lost somebody, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, a sibling, or a pet. There are 5 stages of grief that people typically experience. The first stage is denial. Denial is the period where you fail to accept the fact that your loved one is gone. Next is anger. The feeling of anger starts after you accept the death, you feel the need to blame someone. I know that when I lost my brother, in the beginning, I felt the constant need to blame myself or the doctors. The reason why anger is one of the hardest stages is because of this need for blame. We want to blame because people of our generation are very uncomfortable with things we can't fix. And with grief, there's no way to fix grief, and that's what makes us so angry. After denial and anger, you experience bargaining. With bargaining, you start to feel confused or overwhelmed. You also start to think about the what-ifs. What if I had called the doctor sooner? What if I had tried to save him myself? Next, you start to go into depression. With depression, you might feel hopeless or sad. You also start to lose interest in former activities or not want to hang out with your friends anymore. The last stage is acceptance. This is the most important of all the 5 stages. Acceptance is when you come to terms with the reality of your loss. Now, acceptance doesn't mean your grief is over, but it's when you learn to accept that your grief will always be here. It is also important to know that the 5 stages of grief might not always occur in this order and can reoccur at any point during your grieving process because everyone is different. There are many different types of grief. One of the most common types of grief is anticipatory grief. Anticipatory grief is when you are grieving the things you won't get to do together in the future. You can start to experience anticipatory grief even before your loved one is gone. But that doesn't mean you'll grieve a loved one any less after they die. With anticipatory grief, you may wonder what life will look like after they're gone, or you might miss the activities you used to do together. My family experienced this quite a bit during the 3 years after my brother was diagnosed. The reason we experienced this is because we never knew when he would pass or how long he might live. People often wonder, how can I help someone with their grieving process? But before you can help someone, you need to understand their feelings. Think of it this way. Grief is like a rock. Some days you're carrying around a big boulder that was in you all day, and other days you're carrying around a pebble. You might underestimate this pebble because it doesn't weigh as much, but that doesn't mean it won't affect you. This comes to mind when I think of my friend, whose best friend just lost a sibling very unexpectedly. My friend texted me asking for advice on how to help her friend and told me she was going to ask her how she was feeling, but it seemed like a stupid thing to say. I kind of laughed to myself as I was reading this and thought, oh, you have no idea. Because everyone says stupid things to people who are grieving. They say things like, time heals everything, or everything happens for a reason. But what a grieving person really needs is not for someone to tell them how they should be feeling, but to listen and understand the fact that we will always carry around this rock, even if it's just a pebble. There are many hard things about grief, and most people can't begin to understand the first. There are the long, hard stages of grief, anticipatory grief that can happen even before your loved one is gone, and the roles of others in your life during this tough time. Tom Zuba talks about how once you're feeling well enough to hang out with your friends again, everyone starts to tell you, oh, you look so good, I'm so happy the old you is back. But the thing is, you're not back, and you're not better, because on the inside, you still feel numb, empty, and hopeless, because that's the hard truth about grief. It never goes away. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Zoe Ziegler with a speech entitled Education and Regions in the U.S.
Did you know that Texas seceded from the Union and was briefly its own country? How about that the Civil War was caused because the Union didn't like how much power Texas had? No, that's because that's not entirely true and we don't get taught that here, even though that's what I learned from December of 2023 to June of 2024 while I lived in El Paso, Texas. This was surprising to me because what I had learned was different. Moving across the country was already scary, but then struggling to keep up in my classes because what I had learned in New Hampshire was so different made it even worse. I met people there who moved around 6 times a year. I can't imagine how hard it must be to keep up in school. I will explore how education in states are different, the positive effects and negative effects of this, and how a countrywide curriculum would solve this. Education varies widely across the states. Most differences in education is due to location and money. For example, in an area with a high poverty rate, they often have underfunded education and schools. But typically in a wealthy area, money is going into renovating schools and getting the best equipment for students and teachers. Student-to-teacher ratios also vary significantly. States including New Hampshire, New York, and New Jersey all have much lower student-to-teacher rates of about 11-to-1 or 12-to-1. Meanwhile, states like Texas, Florida, and Alabama have much higher rates, ranging from 18-to-1 to 22-to-1. There's also a ranking system for who has the best education. Realistically, every state should provide the best possible education and should be ranked number 1, but this is far from the truth. According to Deep Creek Times, in 2023, Texas was ranked 43rd. They also ranked Washington, D.C., making a total of 51 states. New Mexico is dead last at 51st. These differences in education directly impacts our students' futures. Of course, there are also positive outcomes of having different curriculums in each state. One major advantage is that students get to learn about their own state's history, which helps them understand how past events shape their lives today. If the U.S. had a nationwide curriculum, it might be difficult to dedicate enough time to individual state history. So while education should be consistent across the states, there should still be room for students to learn about their own region's history and culture. Also, as long as students all learn the same things, it doesn't necessarily matter on how or when they learn them, as long as when students get to college, they're all in the same playing fields. There are also negative effects of having different curricula in each state. One of the negative effects of this is that kids aren't necessarily exposed to the same information, so when they get to college, students aren't on even playing fields. For example, Texas history is taught in Texas from grades 4 through 8. This causes many to miss out on learning things like world geography, civics, Bill of Rights, and culture. Many eventually learn these topics, but if one were to move before they learn these things, they will never have the opportunity. Other states might have already taught it. One of the leading causes for pupils to drop out of college is lack of academic preparation. In states such as Mississippi, the college dropout rate is 64.1%, while states including Delaware, New Hampshire, and Maine have much lower rates, the lowest being 4.1 in Delaware. A national curriculum would help some of the issues of education being different in states. A countrywide curriculum would put all students on the same track in education. This would not solve all of the problems because of other socioeconomic factors, but all students learning the same things no matter the state would help significantly. The Constitution gives states individual freedom to education, so realistically, every state is not going to learn the exact same things, but there should be strict guidelines that every school should teach within the same standards, like history, math, and science. There should be some educational freedom to teach things like local history and regionally relevant topics. The country rated highest for education in the world is Japan. Japan has a countrywide curriculum ensuring every student has a very similar educational experience. Japan is able to provide an equal education across the country because they fund schools equally no matter location. In the US, funds for schools vary between states, which causes the differences in education. In summary, there are many differences between educational curriculums across the country. There are positive effects of these differences and negative effects. Some may ask, how does this apply to me? If you were one of the students who was unable to get a highly rated education, how would you feel when you get to college and everyone around you is educated differently, knows different things, and maybe even farther ahead? From a personal standpoint, I really struggled in history because what I learned in New Hampshire was so different, but I excelled in mathematics because my curriculum was much more rigorous. I wonder if a student from Texas came to school here, would they struggle, and in which classes? But having a countrywide curriculum would help this. So yes, the U.S. should have a countrywide curriculum to ensure all students have the same opportunities. Like Frederick Douglass said, education must be equal and available to everyone. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Adriana Zoller with a speech entitled The Deep Source of Substance Use Disorder.
Addiction is something we all can experience. When we think about addiction, we think about bad habits, but there's a deeper cause than just a bad habit. According to Merriam-Webster, addiction is defined as the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. Being addicted doesn't only affect the family, but also affects everyone else. My parents suffered from drug addiction, also known as substance use disorder. When I turned 7, I moved in with my grandparents and still am living with them today. I wasn't aware of where my dad went or what happened after I left, but I know that a couple years later he came back into my life sober. He now has a job in his own home. My mom also got sober after that night and now has a job or is going to school to become a certified recovery worker, has a healthy baby boy, and is also living in her own home. I have learned that their actions weren't their full intention and that it was the drugs affecting their brain. They showed me that people can become sober if they have the strength and determination to get there. To get sober, you have to work hard, and just because you're sober doesn't mean the problem goes away. You have to continue to fight the addiction for the rest of your life. Although it may become easier, the disorder will always be there. Addiction isn't just a simple thing. Our brain works well on its own, and we can depend on it to tell us what to do and when to do it. But when we add something that messes with our brain may adapt to these new changes. Our reward system, also known as the mesolimbic system, produces dopamine when we do something we enjoy. The mesolimbics, we look for reassurance in everything because our brains and body love that rewarding feeling that comes from the mesolimbic system. Some substances and activities can send a massive surge of dopamine, but when too much dopamine is released, it can cause effects on your behavior, feelings, and thoughts. Addicts are also very commonly known to struggle with depression and anxiety. First, you try something new. You then start to misuse it. Your body starts to tolerate the intake, and then you become dependent. Now you've become addicted. Those are the 5 stages of addiction: initial use, misuse, tolerance, dependence, and finally addiction. There are 2 main causes of addiction: family and mental health. Your mental health plays a big role in your life, especially as you grow up. Trauma is known to be one of the biggest roles in addiction. According to an article from English Mountain Recovery Center, around 70% of addiction is caused by childhood trauma. Childhood trauma can be caused by many things like sexual assault, the loss of parents, and parental neglect. A person with childhood trauma may grow up and look for something to fill the void. Filling the void is a coping mechanism to distract yourself with an activity to make yourself feel a sense of pleasure or feeling that you may struggle to feel on your own. Many cases, addiction is what they will use for a coping mechanism, whether it's an addiction to an activity, substance, or alcohol. Mental disorders also may result in addiction. A lot of people who grow up to have borderline personality disorder, also known as BPD, or depression, are also very likely to struggle with addiction. Borderline personality disorder is a disorder that impacts a person's ability to regulate their emotions properly, and depression is a disorder of extreme sadness and lost in interest in things you love. Those 2 mental disorders can cause a stressful life and many problems within your social life. For example, vaping may give someone a sense of relaxation from their stress, causing causing them to become addicted to vaping. Stressors can also cause addiction, whether it's a family stressor, a friend stressor, or a relationship stressor. Peer pressure can also be a form of stress. It can be a big deal with addiction. It may start with your friend telling you to try something new, but what if it continues happening? The end result is usually addiction. A lot of people who are addicted use their addiction as a coping method to get away from their daily life and stress and problems. In reality, it only makes those problems worse. Addiction is like a maze. There's always an exit, but you have to take the right turns to find it. Along with your childhood, your family also has an impact on your future. Exposure from family or family friends can have a huge impact on kids' choices in the future. If you grow up with a family who drinks, you may think drinking is normal and okay, when in reality, being addicted to alcohol or any substance can have devastating effects on your health. Exposure isn't the only problem, though. Genetics also have an impact on if you're more sustainable to become addicted. According to the American Addiction Center, genetics are responsible for 40 to 60% of addicts. In reality, people can't be born with an addiction, but they can have a higher risk of getting addicted. Along with your parents, you should think about your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and your great-great-grandparents, and onward. Family history of addiction is not something to ignore. If your family is known to struggle with addiction, try to stop the pattern. Those few causes of addiction graze the depth of the topic. The cause of addiction is more than just a bad habit. Addiction can be caused by many more things than just your mental health and family. If you are having trouble with addiction, you should never be afraid to tell someone about it. There are many resources to help you overcome addiction, like therapy, sober living communities, support groups, and relaxation practices. My mother used journaling as a way to cope with her emotions and cravings. Cravings act like the siren song of addiction, a luring feeling that is hard to resist. My mom also participates in therapy and has come a far way from where she used to be. She has been my role model since I was young, due to her great courage and strength. She always told me never to give up, no matter how badly I want to. I found a quote from Demi Lovato, a music artist we all recognize. She said, "One of the hardest things I was learning that I was worth recovery. Becoming sober isn't impossible, but may be very difficult."
Our next speaker is Chloe Towler with a speech entitled, "Why is it harder for criminals to get away with crimes?"
Good evening. I'd like to share a story. I remember when I was a little girl and my grandpa took me to the police station. Anywhere I looked, there was an officer, detective, and even a sergeant in my sight. As this key pressed the keypad, I got to see the cells, and they were dark and cold. I felt like a refrigerator. I also got my fingerprints taken. This was a system of early forensics mainly used in investigations. I almost passed out with amazement once I saw a perfect replica of small imprints of my finger. Once I left, I imagined myself fighting crime and arresting people, just like my grandfather did. This would involve forensics. In the police force, forensics is the application of science to the law and justice system. Over the years, forensics has taught officers and detectives to learn from past history, develop better techniques, and discover more evidence that contains human DNA. Due to this, there are many resources that have changed forensics to be more accurate today. Here are ways it's harder for criminals to get away with crimes now. To begin, let's look at past police work with a poem I want to share. It might be a little bit gross. Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Andrew Borden now is dead. Lizzie hit him on the head. Up in heaven he will sing, on the gallows she will swing. The poem that was recited was a song children sang while playing in front of Lizzie Borden's house after August 4th, 1892. On that day, Andrew and Abby Borden were murdered with trauma to the head, eye, face, and more. During the investigation, police mainly searched the house for hours to try and find evidence. Officers also depended on witnesses so they could get different sides of the story. In the end, Lizzie Borden, their daughter, was arrested for the murder of Andrew and Abby Borden and put into jail for 10 months. Once she had been arrested, the officers could only take her fingerprints and mug shots as evidence because they didn't have such advanced technology as there is now. Compared to now, detectives and officers have to look deeper to find suspects and criminals. Nowadays, if there's a break-in, police have to look for pieces of hair, fingerprints, or footprints. What I just listed were examples of what human DNA can be found in. Other things can be teeth, teeth marks, blood, or fingernails. Did you know that the FBI has a fingerprint library that holds print patterns of more than 10% of the US population? Let me tell you a story that my grandfather told me once. One day, the police station got a call about a missing woman, so they went to the area to search the house and in the tree-filled backyard. Initially, they had no luck finding evidence. But then, after a day or two, an officer noticed a clear Coca-Cola bottle in the dirt driveway that they had overlooked. He took it, used a white powder to look for fingerprints, and found traces of the kidnapper's fingerprints. He ran it through a database, and later that day, the woman was found in an old trailer, and the kidnapper was taken into custody. This shows how effective DNA profiling is. There's also more modern police techniques that are more effective. Most of the things police have are high-tech tools. Common tools are body cameras and thermal imaging. Body cameras are used to provide multiple views of situations, while thermal imaging helps officers find criminals in the dark by creating an image when body heat is detected. For example, in 2022, officers used a technique called fog reveal to search billions of records from around 250 million phones. Afterwards, they received data to create location analyses that are known among law enforcement. This technique has helped since 2018 with investigations from the murder of an Arkansas nurse to locating participants in the January 6th insurrection down at the Capitol. But after all of these cases, there have been so many resources that have made forensics more accurate today. Whether it was a kidnapping or a murder, police have always found a way to solve citizens' problems. Forensics are like pieces of a puzzle. Every little piece of evidence or information leads you one step closer to finding out the full picture. Every case counts because the final result can either make someone's family sigh with relief or cry with sadness and confusion. After every case, police have been able to discover the truth of crimes because of the evidence that the power of forensics unfolds. Back to the story about my grandfather. It's always made me want to discover new things and look deeper into problems to find the truth. And maybe someday be a police detective just like my grandpa. Lastly, here's a quote from American film director Blake Edwards about detective work. "Nothing matters but the facts. Without them, the science of criminal investigation is nothing more than a guessing game. I think this is what detective work is truly about." Thank you.
Our next speaker is Avery Oliniak with a speech entitled "The Breaking Chains of Alcoholism."
The person I met wasn't the person I knew that day. I looked up and saw his face. It wasn't the person who gave me candy when I was little. It wasn't the person who I saw years back who would come up to me and give me a giant hug with a bright smile. As I'm holding back my tears, I see his eyes. I never really believed in true evil, but that was the closest I've ever come to it. I don't remember everything he yelled at me. but I do remember one line that still haunts my memories. Everything you have is because of me. Although this isn't true in the slightest, in that moment, in that second, I believed it. And because of what? What set this all off? The one substance that 20 million Americans are addicted to: alcohol. This substance is a lot more dangerous than people may think. This substance causes alcoholism. According to Gale and Context, alcoholism is defined as alcohol dependence or an addiction to consuming alcohol. Alcohol abuse can profoundly impact everyone in a negative way by the way it affects people and how it can affect your health. Alcoholism is negative for so many other reasons. First, alcohol abuse has a major impact on society. Even people that don't have alcoholism can still be affected. On average, each drinker impacts 6 people. This means 120 million people in the US have been or are being affected by alcohol that aren't even addicted. And it doesn't just affect people, but the money that is lost from direct and indirect costs due to alcoholism is $140 billion every year. That is equal to about 87 million iPhone 16s and 280 million TVs. Could you even dream about that much money? I know I couldn't. But according to Facts About Alcohol by Ted Gottfried, the need to drink can oversee family, friends, and things you usually enjoy. Overall, many people are impacted by alcoholism, not just drinkers. It can also affect society and your life in many ways. Next, alcohol use disorder is caused by growing up with trauma and violence due to different environmental and social factors. It can also be caused by genetics. According to the National Institutes of Health, studies show that alcoholism in adoptees correlates more strongly with their biological parents than adopted parents. There's no one gene for alcoholism. It is multiple genes that pop up during different social situations, which causes a reaction within the person. Don't be fooled, though. There are not just one, but 330 ways to get alcohol use disorder and 35 ways to develop alcohol dependence. If this disorder is caused by trauma during people's childhood, it is based on negligence and stressful situations. People can prevent this from happening by not putting anybody in a stressful situation and reading people's body language, because you never know what it could cause in the long run. There are many other things alcohol affects, including your health. When I was younger, I went to the store with my parents. We were checking out, and I offered to carry the bags with alcohol in them. My parents told me I couldn't, and I didn't understand, but now I do. How can something be acceptable in society if a kid can't even carry it out of a store? I'm not completely against drinking, but lips that touch alcohol don't necessarily have to drown in them. Otherwise, it can become a problematic part of your life. Alcohol can cause liver cancer, brain damage, high blood pressure, and that's just a few. There are many more. As you can see, there are many risks to alcoholism, and that's why seeking help is a major part of recovery. And if someone you know is struggling, all you can do is then give them the resources they need to recover. It's like giving a kid vegetables. I know I've been there, where I see vegetables on my plate and will not want to eat them. Even when your parents give you the opportunity or resources to eat the vegetables, you will not eat them until you want to eat them for your own health. They have to want to do it themselves. Don't try to fix someone. Just be there when they're ready to find help. Remember the person I talked about in the beginning? He's my uncle. And yes, to be honest, it is hard to see a family member fall into such a deep hole and not being able to climb out. But he finally wanted to seek help and now just finished a month of rehab. This just proves when everything seems hopeless, always ask for help. Even in life in general, asking for help is always a great option. And more people need to, because otherwise, alcoholism will continue to affect society. Alcoholism will continue to be based on trauma. Alcoholism will continue to affect your health in unimaginable ways. But there are resources, including people who can help. I would like to end off with my favorite quote: "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts." Winston Churchill. This correlates deeply with alcoholism, because failure can be disappointing, but it doesn't define who you are. Success is great, but it will not last unless you work. But no matter what happens, the courage to push through the hard times will always be the most important. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Evan Graham with a speech entitled Chess, the Greatest Game.
Knight to b8. Checkmate. I shook my opponent's hand. Who was my opponent? Well, he was a person who taught me every aspect of the game of chess. My grandfather. It was a milestone in my life. Finally, after 1.5 years of trying and over 100 defeats, I finally won. I was overjoyed. This was the first time I had ever beaten my grandfather. Chess is a fascinating game with a very long history. There are multiple aspects of the game to learn about, including lifelong benefits, historical context, downsides, and players. Chess has a long and interesting history. No one knows who's invented chess, but it is believed to have been created in India in 600 AD, where it then spread to northern Persia. Here, it continued to grow in popularity. Shortly after that time, the Moorish conquest of Spain brought chess to Europe, where chess then spread to the entire world. Chess was played by many rulers of the world, and then people would continue the culture of chess through the 11th century, when people would establish competitive chess. About 850 years after that, modern chess appeared in the 20th century. Soon, chess world championships emerged, where people could play other chess enthusiasts. The first ever chess world champion came into existence, the most memorable being Garry Kasparov. Today, chess is played worldwide by millions of people. The importance of this game is evidenced by the effort placed on its creations and improvements. Chess is known as the royal game, as it is based on war. Each piece was created to resemble an action taken in war. For example, pieces resemble military units common in warfare at that time: infantry, cavalry, chariots, a general, and a king. In modern day, chess remains popular and has been revolutionized by chess engines, or artificially intelligent creations. The most notable advancement started with the Turk, a machine that made the first ever chess engine, which functioned as an actual player and improved its skill by learning from a human's mistake. This was a landmark for the beginning of chess engines, where AI would improve its limits like it had never done before. Although chess is an ancient game, it also has modern applications that can be useful in everyday life. Chess can help improve memory, as players need to remember special moves to have the advantage in the game. It can also help the player think in their opponent's shoes while teaching patience and discipline. Studies have actually shown that chess can protect players from dementia. Chess can also help people with ADHD calm down when playing and help cure restlessness that some have. Chess shows you that you need to take time so that you don't make any mistakes and can find the best move on the chessboard. As said by a world chess champion, life is like a chess game. You never want to waste a move. Sadly, chess also has some downsides. Competitive chess is a very serious job and induce extreme amounts of chess and lots of mental fatigue. Chess can cause you to be excluded from the outside world and can be very socially isolating. For some, chess can even be considered bad for you in some cases. Chess can cause you, for example, as chess correspondent Malcolm Payne said, you lose weight during a chess tournament of this intensity. The pressure is absolutely enormous. Additionally, obsessively playing chess can cause some physical problems, like neglecting your physical health. For example, in some cases, people play chess instead of exercising or going outside, which can be detrimental to your body. Sometimes, chess can even be addicting. It can cause the player to be glued to the board and having major pressure to win. To combat these stressors, Payne says, being well rested is of utmost importance, as fatigue can often be the player's downfall. Competition can be healthy if it's not taken to the extreme. Everything considered, my long chess journey has shown me that chess is an exciting way to learn and have fun. Chess has a long and rich history which can prove it is a lasting game and will be around for many more centuries. While there are some risks associated with the game, the overwhelming benefits far outweigh the downsides. It is important for players to manage their stress. Chess can improve your health, build community, and provide a fun pastime. As former world chess champion Manny Pacquiao once said, chess is not always about winning. Simply, it's about learning. And so is life. Thank you.
We will now take a 10-minute intermission.
Welcome back. Our next speaker is Renee Mama with a speech entitled The Power of Apologizing.
Hello, and good evening. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry you disagree. I'm sorry you're upset. How many times have we all heard or said these two words? Do most say it with conviction, or is it just a catchphrase? I remember an incident from second grade. I was doing my own thing in class when a student said something to me that the teacher didn't approve of. But I was not bothered by it. I was ready to move on. But the teacher, well, she had different plans. She pulled the student I up to the front of the class. I wanted to hide from the spotlight. I wanted to curl up in a little ball and disappear. I just wanted the situation to be over. The teacher forced the student to apologize by telling them exactly what to say. It felt very robotic. I mean, was this a genuine apology? I just responded with, okay, but this wasn't good enough for the teacher. She made me say, I accept your apology, but don't do it again. Looking back on the situation, even if the student had said something mean, the apology had no feelings behind it. In this speech, I'll be digging deeper into why it's so hard to apologize, what to avoid when apologizing, and how to give a genuine apology. So when I'm finished, I hope you will all have a better understanding of the power of sorry. I'm sure you have all had a time in your life when a knot in your stomach kept you from apologizing. Maybe Elton John is right. Sorry seems to be the hardest word. To begin, let's explore why it's so hard to apologize. The Cambridge Dictionary defines apology as an act of saying you're sorry for something wrong you've done. It seems so simple, so why do people struggle? One reason lies within thinking it's all about yourself and not recognizing what the experience felt like for the other person. Another reason we struggle to apologize is because we are not willing to face the consequences of our actions. Our instinct is to make excuses or blame others. According to an article entitled Why Apologizing is So Difficult from Psychology Today, it states that many people fear that their self-worth will diminish if they apologize, highlighting that they have made a mistake. An American author, Rachel E. Goodrich, says, "Never believe you are so great or important, so right or proud, that you cannot kneel at the feet of someone you've hurt and offer a humble, sincere apology." Lastly, pride can hold you back from doing the right thing, not wanting to let go of your power and control. So you must be like Elsa and let it go. Next, I'm going to focus on what to avoid when apologizing, because nobody wants to be the bearer of a bad apology. Like Benjamin Franklin said, never ruin an apology with an excuse. First and foremost, no ifs and buts, because when you say, "I'm sorry, but I had every right to raise my voice," this is not owning up to your wrongdoing. I know it's hard, but otherwise people may see it as an argument, not an apology. Do not be vague with your apology. Be sure to say it like it is. Keep it short and sweet, because over-apologizing is irritating. Do not use a sarcastic tone, like, "I'm so sorry," because this undermines the apology, and avoid showing remorse. Always think through what you're going to say, because you do not want to do more harm than good. Lastly, I'm going to explain why it's equally important to know how to deliver a sincere apology. A true apology goes beyond the typical "I'm sorry." If you're delivering a genuine apology, you own up to what you did. Word choices matter when apologizing, so be sure to use the right ones. In 2013, lime Skittles were replaced by green apple Skittles, upsetting many lime lovers. Lime fans spoke out through many social media platforms. One Skittle fan, Matthew Calloway, said, "Green apple Skittles are the physical manifestation of sadness." After years of complaints, Skittles started a mission called Apologize the Rainbow, where the company delivered over 100,000 personal apologies. They even offered each of the upset customers free packages of lime-only Skittles. Skittle lovers everywhere celebrated the return of the lime Skittles. This is a perfect example of a genuine apology, because Skittles acknowledged their wrongdoing, showed remorse, recognized the impact, and offered amends, which, according to Roy Luecki, a professor at Ohio State University, found that the best received apologies included these elements. When executed properly, an apology can be a powerful tool. Remembering my own story about the forced apology makes me wonder, how many others have been put in a similar situation where the art of apologizing was put to the test? Putting meaning behind those two simple words is crucial. Statistics show that 46% of Americans are waiting for an apology from someone in their life. And 41% say they have lost sleep over an apology they needed to give. So do not put your apology on hold. You have the power to apologize, so use it. In a society that needs more kindness and respect, apologizing is the way forward. Like martial artist Bruce Lee said, mistakes are always forgivable if one has the courage to admit them. As a final thought, just remember, nobody is perfect and we all make mistakes, but how you choose to fix them is what really matters. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Allie Hamlin with a speech entitled, "What Can We Do with a Little Bit of Determination?"
Good evening. If you're truly determined, every obstacle becomes a stepping stone. This is a quote stated by Maxime Lagacé, a professional ice hockey goalie, that describes how powerful determination can be. I know for me, the obstacles I have to face are caused by the insults and unfairness that come with being a girl playing for a boys' hockey team. I remember one recent example. At a USA regional camp tryout, we signed up online and the website let me register as a female and pay. When we got to the tryout, 45 minutes away on a Sunday morning, I lasted 5 minutes before I was called out of the locker room. The directors asked me if I knew this was a boys' tryout. I said yes and told them I played for a boys' team. My dad and I tried to tell them that the website let us sign up. They said they had sent out emails to the 4 other girls that signed up to let them know they couldn't come and that they had to go to the girls' tryouts instead. We didn't get an email. They checked, and apparently they just forgot to send an email to us. How do you forget to send an email to one person, but you remember to send it to the other 4? We continue to try to explain to them that the girls' tryouts aren't competitive enough and that I do boys' tryouts all the time because I play boys' hockey. They wouldn't listen and kicked us out. I wasn't even allowed to get on the ice. The funny thing about this whole experience is that my teammates all told me after they tried out that I would have been the best goalie there by far. This entire incident really irritated me. It was so frustrating that they wouldn't even let me skate. Then I started thinking, and I decided if they weren't going to let me try out, then I was going to make them regret it. This obstacle was going to help lead me to success by becoming a stepping stone and fueling the fire inside of me. This feeling is something we all experience in our lives. It's known as determination. According to the Britannica Dictionary, determination is defined as a quality that makes you continue trying to do or achieve something that is difficult. This emotion comes from numerous different events and occurrences, either bad or good. You could get determination from an encouragement, or you could get it from an insult that makes you want to be better. Along with these reasons, determination comes from brain chemicals, most commonly one called dopamine. The magazine The Neuroscience of Perseverance, from the article Psychology Today, explains dopamine as the reward molecule of our brain. It makes us feel happy and satisfied after achievements, even small ones, like cleaning a room or completing a chore. There was a study done by James Old and Peter Milner in 1954 that found the pleasure center of the brain. They used a simulation with rats by sending a jolt of electricity to the rodent when it completed a task, which had the effect of releasing dopamine. The rats started to associate success from completing a task with the achievement of feeling good. Dopamine not only brings our mood up, it builds good habits. Because we associate happiness with completing tasks, we want to accomplish more things in order to feel these good emotions. These effects of dopamine lead us through life and get us past hard challenges, like my struggles with gender inequality in sports. Speaking of gender inequality, one big example of determination is the history of women's rights and feminism over the years. Feminism is defined as the idea that men and women are equal and deserve the same rights and opportunities. This idea has been going on for years and is still practiced and fought for today. However, it was not a complete purpose until around the 17th or 18th centuries. Between then and now, there have been conventions held, books written, laws changed, rights given, and so much more. Where our world stands today, socially and politically, is a huge result of the female determination to succeed and gain equal rights. There are many challenges in life that can be overcome by determination. Just like that unfair trial I had to deal with, life will throw obstacles at you left and right. I remember another example, when my friend went to one of my hockey games and stood next to some of the dads from the other team. You can imagine my anger when she told me these grown dads were talking about me, a 13-year-old girl, behind my back, making rude comments such as, "Shoot the puck, she's just a girl." We were winning by 5 goals, but they didn't seem to care about that part. Yes, this deeply angered me, but I knew deep down they were just jealous of my ability. I didn't care about their biased remarks. I proved what I needed to and plan to do so for the rest of my life. You all can overcome events like these too. You just need a little bit of determination. Push yourself to try harder in everything you do. Have faith that you will succeed and live a good life, because as a famous boxer, Muhammad Ali once said, "Don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion." Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leah Costa with a speech entitled "The Truth About Lying."
Good evening. Do you have a 5? I asked my brother during a game of Go Fish. As I was patiently waiting for his response, I decided to look out the car window and take in the scenery. To my surprise, I saw the reflection of my brother's cards clear as day. That is when he responded with, "No, go fish," shaking his head. The first thing that came to my mind was, "You liar." I knew my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. It was perfectly obvious that he had a 5, and my brother could not be trusted when playing a game of Go Fish. The Oxford English Dictionary defines lying as a false statement made with intent to deceive, and that is exactly what my brother did. All these years later, it's clearly water under the bridge, but I can't but wonder, why do people lie in the first place? People lie for many reasons, whether to avoid conflict, gain an advantage, or protect someone's feelings. While some lies may seem harmless, they often cause serious consequences, such as harming the liar's mental health and weakening their relationships. By understanding the reasons behind lying and the toll it takes on mental health and relationships, we can all make better choices to live with greater honesty and integrity. From little white lies to major deceptions, dishonesty is everywhere. Lying is a serious problem because it's common, takes many forms, and comes from different motivations. A study from Science Daily discovered that through a 10-minute conversation, 60% of people lie 2 to 3 times, often without noticing it. Psychology Today identifies several types of lies, including white lies, exaggerations, lies of omission, and self-preservation lies. White lies are small lies meant to protect someone's feelings, like pretending to have a bad birthday gift. Exaggerations are stretching the truth to seem more impressive, like saying, I ran 5 miles, when it was really 2. Lies of omission are leaving out important details to seem more impressive, like telling my parents I finished my homework, but not mentioning I skipped a couple questions. Finally, self-preservation lies are told to avoid consequences, like saying, I didn't eat the last cookie, when I obviously did. When someone feels guilty about lying, psychological defenses kick in to make the liar feel better. For example, what they don't know won't hurt them, or I only did it once. Excusing our lies to ease guilt can trick us into thinking they're harmless, making it hard to learn from our mistakes. White lies are the most common form of dishonesty. A study published by the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse discovered that 90% of all lies reported were little white lies. However, as Austin O'Malley, an English professor at the University of Notre Dame, once said, those who think it's permissible to tell white lies soon grow colorblind. Meaning, people who get used to telling small lies start to see all lies the same, making it easier to be dishonest. No matter the size of lie, it always has an impact, especially on the person telling it. Lying makes your brain work harder than telling the truth, as discussed in Science News Explorers. Your brain has to come up with a lie, remember it, and make sure you don't slip up. One part of the brain that works extra hard during this process is the amygdala. It controls your emotions and helps manage your facial expressions. That's why, when you lie, you might notice your face turning red or feeling warm. This physical reaction is your brain stressing to keep the lie believable. Lying can also cause an increase in heart rate, sweating, a dry mouth, voice changes, and many more side effects. By being aware of these effects, you might find it easier to choose honesty. On top of that, there's a constant worry of being caught. For instance, a study reported by American Psychological Association found that 70% of people who were caught lying regretted being dishonest. And, as Abraham Lincoln wisely said, no man has a good enough memory to be a successful liar. That shows that no matter how hard we try, keeping track of our lies is almost impossible, and they eventually catch up with us. You might tell yourself that one lie won't hurt, but then you keep lying until it becomes a habit. It's like putting a wall between you and your friends. At first, the wall is small, but each lie adds another brick. Over time, it gets higher, and it gets harder to break down. Soon, people will feel like they can't get through to you, and you feel trapped behind a wall of mistrust. Once that happens, even your truths become questionable. Relationships are built on trust, and once that's broken, it's hard to repair the damage. Overall, lying can cause inner conflict, making you feel disconnected from who you really are and lowering your self-worth over time. Just like my story with my brother in the game of Go Fish, where a small lie led to distrust and frustration, lying can have lasting effects on our relationships and reputation. Therefore, next time you're tempted to lie, ask yourselves these questions. Would anyone be harmed if I withheld the truth? What are the long-term consequences of this choice? How would I feel if someone withheld the truth from me in a similar situation? And lastly, is dishonesty in this situation an act of fear or a form of compassion? By understanding the reasons behind lying and the toll it takes on mental health and relationships, we can all make better choices to live with greater honesty and integrity. I'll wrap it up with a bit of wisdom on the ultimate expert on lying. No, not a politician, but from the movie Pinocchio. Lies, my boy, are easily recognized. There are 2 kinds, those with short legs and those with long noses. Jiminy Cricket. Meaning, some lies are obvious right away, like a long nose, while others may take time but still don't get far, like short legs. Either way, the truth always comes out in the end. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jamison Hardy with a speech entitled Liberty and Justice for All, or so we're told.
Hello. Before I begin, I'd like to say that this is a difficult topic, and it's going to be a heavy speech. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of room for humor, but trust me, we'll make it through together and still try to find ways to smile over the next 5 minutes. With that said, I'd like to open with a story. Last year I was getting ready and I received a news alert on my phone. I opened my phone to find that the Supreme Court was currently debating whether or not to let businesses, public or private, refuse service to same-sex couples and transgender individuals. I was taken aback and felt I had just been stabbed. Stabbed by the knife of bigotry and discrimination, wielded by the country I had once said I loved. Wielded by the country who I thought found me a worthy citizen, as an equal. I looked further into it and found that this was not the first discriminatory bill introduced and accepted in the past few years. As of March 2023, over 385 anti-LGBTQ laws had been introduced and accepted at state levels. That's close to 25 more bills than there are days in a year. These included bans on public drag shows, bans on gender-affirming care, bans on sex change operations, and abuse charges for parents who are supportive of their transgender children. Furthermore, as of January 20th, our current president has signed several executive orders removing mentions entirely of transgender and other queer Americans. I've learned that inequality is still a major issue in America today. But why? First off, what is equality? The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines equality as the quality or state of being equal. If given thought, we can see that there has never been a time in our country's history where all are treated equally, and unfortunately, this is still accepted today. But why? I believe that inequality still exists and is accepted today as a result of past prejudice and modern blissful ignorance. And if nothing is done to work towards a more equal future, there's no possible way our country can advance. A major reason inequality still exists is as a result of past prejudice and discrimination. I mean, there's never been a time in our country's history where everyone has been treated equally under the American flag, and Americans have accepted this for hundreds of years. This can be seen through slavery and then racial segregation once slavery was ended. While segregation was banned for a time, just last month our current presidential administration released a memo on February 15th that racial segregation was no longer explicitly banned at federal levels. Or we can see inequality through homosexuality being punishable by death post-Revolutionary War and then punishable by life in prison in the late 19th century. While the punishments lessened, homosexuality remained a crime through the early 2000s. Same-sex marriage rights would not come until 2015. I mean, that's only 10 years ago. We can also see inequality through the oppression of women. Women didn't get the right to vote until 1920, and even then couldn't own their own credit card. That right wouldn't come until 1973. I mean, even within these marginalized groups, inequality existed. For example, at a women's rights march in 1913, Ida Wells and other women of color were segregated from marching with the white women. Because inequality has become such a prevalent part of our society, it has become something we are used to today. It has become something familiar to us. The mere exposure effect, more commonly known as the familiarity principle, tells us that humans tend to prefer things that they are familiar with and will often be scared to choose the non-familiar option. In this context, we can see that because American society has lived with inequality for so long, we have become familiar with it and now tend to lean towards it and are scared to change. Inequality also exists and is accepted in America today as a result of blissful ignorance. The term ignorance is bliss can be used very appropriately in this situation. This term was first used by notable poet Thomas Gray in his poem Ode on a Distant Prospect of Eton College. It means a lack of knowledge on a subject often equates to an absence of concern in an air of blissful happiness. To quote author Craig Shrives, some people prefer to live by the notion of ignorance is bliss, as a way to avoid the burdens that come with knowing certain truths. Regarding inequality, I believe that many people are fine with accepting inequality because they are blissfully ignorant and unwilling to learn about people that may be different to their own. If people were simply to learn more about people belonging to groups who they might not consider their own, they'd find that oftentimes these people aren't that different from them and are often just as valuable as them. This still leaves us with the question of, if it doesn't apply to me, why should I care? The idea of, I might not be queer, I might not be a woman, I'm not a person of color. Why should I care about these people being treated differently than me? Being treated as less of a human than me? Well, you should care about it because the future of our country's advancement depends upon it. I want you all to think for a minute. What's going to happen if we continue to oppress certain groups, make their voices unheard, and only let a portion of the population make decisions and let their discoveries be known, while we make the other percent of the population fight for their own basic rights? Well, our country will advance slower if we can't work together, regardless of what someone was born as. Now, to conclude, how can we move towards a more equal future? My one answer to this would to be judged based on actions, not something someone can't control or was born with. I want you all to take a minute and look around, side to side, and look at your fellow audience members. As you do this, I do not want you to see a black man, a white woman, a gay person, and a transgender individual, but rather a person, and another person. See everyone for what they are fundamentally, people. See everyone as a person and only judge them once you get to know them and learn who they are, beyond the color of their skin, beyond their gender, beyond who they love. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said so adequately on Capitol Hill so many years ago, this will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to become a great nation, then this must become true. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Logan Brown with a speech entitled College Benefits.
I was sitting on the couch one day with my dad when I brought up the topic college. He then went on to tell me about what he did in college and what his degree could get him. This got me to think about what I could get and accomplish with a college degree. I wanted to know what spending years in college was really like. I wanted to just know what a day on campus was like. I'd always seemed to show some sort of interest. College sounded like it could be a roller coaster. I felt like a college education was an advantage that was offered to anyone who was offered and who could afford it, and started to wonder why not everyone wanted it. This made me think about how important earning a college degree really was. According to the Cambridge University Dictionary, a degree is a course of study at a college or university. If given the opportunity, attending college is so important because of the salaries of people with at least 2 years of college or an associate's degree for someone with a high school diploma. And talking about the investments you can make in college and the benefits you can get from them. Although college is very expensive, and this may be the reason that some people and most people shy away from it, according to APLU, 87% of people with a bachelor's degree report as well-being or financially well. Attending college is a benefit for anyone who has the opportunity to attend. This is again because of the benefits like salaries and even the investments that you can receive from attending. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a bachelor's degree is a degree that is given to a student by a college or university, usually after 4 years of study. A bachelor's degree gives you the access to a career of your choice with more flexibility and more options. An example of a bachelor's degree is a bachelor of either science, arts, or fine arts. Most of the jobs that people can get with a bachelor's degree involve business, tech, and healthcare, which according to APLU pay a higher yearly salary. According to the article, college degrees still pay off. The average person with a bachelor's degree makes about $2.9 million by the age of 64. A person with a high school diploma makes about $1.8 million by the time they are 64. Statistics show that a person with at least a 2-year college degree has a higher lifetime salary than someone with just a high school diploma. The lifetime salary difference between someone with a high school diploma and someone with a 2- or 4-year college degree is at the highest it has ever been right now. The current lifetime salary between the two is millions of dollars apart. The article, College Degrees Still Pay Off, which talks about lifetime salary differences, states college graduates continue to earn far more over a lifetime than a worker with no more than a high school diploma. Furthermore, if a person wants to earn more of a lifetime salary, they should take the chance at college if they are given the opportunity. There are also some benefits to college in having a degree with investing. You can invest your money and usually get a better return than input. An example of this would be the fact that the average return for a bachelor's degree investment is about 15% per year. This led to some of the highest numbers of students investing in college ever recorded last year. A student investing in college could also just mean that they take the time to get a college education. Stated in an article from Walden University, the claim, an investment in knowledge always pays the best interest, is stated. According to Northeastern University, people with college degrees also have more job stability and will likely get hired first when a job slot is open. People who have a bachelor's degree are also proven to have more satisfaction in their jobs for a longer time period. People who earn a bachelor's degree are also proven to have better self-communication, more collaboration, and a better ability to manage time. Investing and taking the time to attend college is so important because it can lead to more opportunities in a person's life. I hope everyone who listened to this speech today gained some type of interest in college and college degrees from the information, just like I did the first time I learned about the topic. Attending college is a benefit for anyone who has the opportunity to. This is because of things like finances and salary differences. Students that still have college ahead of them should be able to understand how important college and the degrees you can get from it really are. People should know that putting in the extra couple of years of education may not sound like something that they want to do at first, but in the long run, it's well worth it. And finally, people should be able to see and understand all of the benefits a student can get from attending college. Going back to that quote from Walden University, when talking about investments, an investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. If affordable, college should be at the top of every student's list. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Avery Pelletier with a speech entitled, Why Do People Bully?
Good evening, everyone. I remember when I was in 4th grade, and it all started with the rude, snarky comments and rude remarks. I couldn't control anything that was happening. I just remember the feeling of misery after going to school every single day and being constantly made fun of. I always tried to take matters into my own hands, sticking up for myself, telling teachers, reporting them to the guidance counselor, but nothing ever seemed to work. The story is about bullying. According to the Anti-Bullying Alliance, bullying can be defined as the repetitive, intentionally hurting of one person or group where the relationship involves an imbalance of power. Bullying can be physical, verbal, or via online. Based on this definition, bullying can be seen to have many negative effects such as mental health, PTSD, and the knowledge of the 3 types of bullying. There are many harmful effects of bullying, which is linked to various mental health disorders. Everyone has experienced bullying at least once in their life or have been a bystander of bullying. To begin, bullying can have tremendously strong impacts on your mental health. A quote from Galen Context's Bullying Topic Overview quotes about 71% of young people witness bullying, that the victim may develop mental health problems that include depression, anxiety, sleep pattern changes, or even eating pattern changes. Bullying can damage someone's relationships, self-esteem, reputation, or even their acceptance within a group. In addition to those topics, school is the main issue where bullying starts to occur in mental health issues. I cannot remember a time where I haven't gone to a new school or other schools that I have not dealt with bullying. Next, bullying can lead to PTSD. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, which is an anxiety disorder that develops after experiencing or witnessing a traumatic event. Those who was bullied as children tend to have a greater risk of being bullied in their adult lives. These characteristics slowly develop over time, which have a greater risk of being bullied. They have powerlessness, and anger and fear are also strongly connected to PTSD, that which makes it more likely that a person who was bullied would develop the disorder. Therefore, bullying is an often cycle. Since bullies have often been bullied in their adult lives by parents or other people that surround them daily, they're more likely to develop the disorder. Finally, this leads me to the types of bullying. There are mainly 3 different types of bullying, which can be known as verbal bullying, social bullying, and physical bullying. Furthermore, starting off with verbal bullying. Verbal bullying is when the bully is writing or saying mean things about the victim. Verbal bullying commonly includes teasing, name-calling, inappropriate sexual comments, or even threatening to cause harm. Remember that story I told you when I was in 4th grade? I got bullied every day going to school, and I couldn't do anything about it because nobody listened to me when I spoke up. When I began to get bullied, this was my first encounter with the harmful effects of bullying, which are linked to many mental health disorders. If you're being bullied, speak up about it because it's not okay. Just because bullying is common does not mean it's okay, nor acceptable. The best way to assert dominance to a bully is giving them no reaction at all. Even if it hurts you or makes you upset, do your best to stay confident and calm with no reaction. Giving no reaction will make the bully feel incapable that their hurtful words aren't working to make you upset. In all likelihood, it will throw the bully into a panic and they will get embarrassed, and most likely the bully will stop. For example, if you're being bullied online, take screenshots and collect all the information that you have of you being bullied. Don't say anything at all, leave them on red and block them. Delete the account you are being bullied on and share it with a parent or a guardian that will speak up for you. In the end, if you do this, you will feel relieved. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Charlie Marceau with a speech entitled Surfing History.
I rode my first wave 4 summers ago when my older friends convinced me to go out with their surfboard. The waves at the time were 2 to 3 feet, but they broke down great. My friends taught me to cut my hands and propel myself forward. As I looked in the distance of the cold blue ocean, there it was, the perfect wave. My friends were shouting from the shore, "Go, go, go." As I slapped my hands in the water trying to beat the waves, next thing I know, I feel my board rising. As I popped up, I could feel myself guiding the wave into shore. When I was guiding the wave back into the beach, I felt like I was calming the wave down, and I felt connected to it. It was like I was telling the wave what to do. That excitement was one of the best feelings I've ever felt. Since then, I've always wondered, how could a person have this amazing idea? The history of surfing is way more complex than many would think. It originated in the ancient Polynesia on the islands of Tahiti and Oahu. The year 1776 was the first time anyone has reported people surfing. The man's name was Captain James Cook, a British sailor who was sailing with the Royal Navy in Keikula Bay. Captain Cook was the commander of a very successful voyage that was exploring the whole world. But in 1777, Captain Cook sailed on his 3rd and final voyage and stopped by Hawaii. The Hawaiians didn't like his presence, so they planned to steal one of Captain Cook's boats. As the tensions grew, it led to a fight that ended up being in the Hawaiians' favor. Captain Cook was later murdered by a group of Polynesians. A history from 1777 to today claims that Hawaii has always been considered the home of surfing. Surfing was exclusively for the royalties of Hawaii, but due to the end of the Hawaiian monarchy, it was introduced to civilians in 1819. The ritual was to praise the spirits of the ocean and feel more connected by the ocean's forces. Whoever was going to surf was to praise the sea and to grant good waves. The top-of-the-line surfboards took about a week to make. The board-making process was also full of rituals and prayers before being used. No one else besides the Hawaiians knew what surfing was, until a religious man from America named Hiram Bingham, who worked for a pioneer company, was sailing in the sea, and he saw the more odd and explicit parts of the surfing culture. According to the ABC 17 Los Angeles, Hiram Bingham called surfing barbarism and skilled board riders almost naked savages. He described the scene as appalling and banned surfing in 1821. Over time, Hawaiians forgot about the surfing culture besides the people that took the risk to surf. This time period was called the Dark Ages. After the long ban in the 19th century, surfing was rediscovered by Hawaiians. The first few years of the 20th century, tourism in Hawaii helped demonstrate the idea of surfing. In 1907, at Redondo Beach, California, surfing was introduced to America. America adopted surfing and modernized it. During the early 1950s, the Waikiki Surf Club created the first ever international surfing tournament in Malacca, Hawaii. Officially in 1982, the Association of the International Sports wanted to make surfing into an Olympic sport. A big piece of surfing history is defined by one man named Duke Kamalahoku. Duke Kamalahoku was born on August 24, 1890, on the island of Oahu in Honolulu, Hawaii. Duke had 9 siblings, including him, that made it into adulthood. Duke grew up very poor and sometimes would dive into the harbor to collect coins that tourists had tossed overboard ships. When Duke was around 4 years old, he learned how to swim by being tossed out of a canoe. Duke also accelerated at all kinds of sports, such as baseball, basketball, football, and soccer. Duke was also a naturally good swimmer. When he didn't surf at the beach, he would sometimes swim. Duke was quiet and often daydreamed at home and at school. He was a decent student in elementary and middle school, but dropped out of high school before he graduated. After he dropped out of high school, he would either be in the ocean or worked unusual jobs. Due to the amount of tourists in Hawaii, he would sometimes work in the water by teaching others how to surf or canoe. Duke used his carpenting skills from high school to help him craft his own longboard that had no fins. If there weren't any good ways, he'd just have fun, play other sports, or he'd swim. Duke's friends William Cortrell and Kenneth Winter created a surf group called Hulu Nalu that expanded lots of diversity, like men, women, black people, white people, and Hawaiians, that would all get together almost every day to party on the beach and also swim and surf. According to the stuff you missed in history class, stated, Duke created the surfing etiquette that many rules are still used to this day. William Rollins, the Hawaii's assistant district attorney, timed Duke for his unbelievable swimming techniques and got Hulu Nalu in the AAU program, so the members of the club can participate in official competitions. Duke once said, "The best surfer out there is the one having the most fun." Duke sadly passed away on January 22, 1968, from a deadly heart attack at the age of 77. Duke was honored for days and eventually was buried back at the Waikiki Beach in Honolulu, Hawaii. When you see people surfing on the beach, they can refer to how it was introduced to the world. The origins of surfing are maybe more complex than people think. Before Duke died, he stated, "The ocean is my temple, the waves are my prayers." Surfing really can change the way people see the world. Surfing is also very calming and a great way to spend time at the beach. Many people use to surf to refresh their brain as well. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Evan Christie with a speech entitled Fear of Failure.
Good evening. I want everyone here to think about their greatest fear. For some of you, it's fear of clowns, drowning, maybe spiders, or possibly heights. And if you're like my younger sister, your biggest fear is the chewing gum underneath the restaurant tables. For me, my biggest fear is not living up to people's expectations. This is an example of fear of failure. Being scared to fail happens to everyone, and it is caused by 3 main reasons: perfectionism, success, and negative self-talk. I don't think I'm necessarily scared to fail. I think I'm also kind of a perfectionist. I always strive to be the best, and that makes me very competitive. Being a perfectionist, though, is risky. It can lead to fear of failure and many other problems. I think the most memorable time when I was scared to fail was when I was playing soccer. It was late fall, and my team was up 1-0 against a team higher than us in the ranking. My mindset wasn't how can we score more and achieve the goal of winning, but it became how do we not lose. I started to drop further and further back on the field in hopes of preventing the other team from scoring. I look over my shoulder and I'm in line with my defense. I'm playing as a defender. Now my coach is upset, my defense is upset, my teammates are upset, and the other team, they're taking advantage of it. All because I was scared. It's like Theodore Roosevelt once said, "It is hard to fail, but it is worse to have never tried to succeed." That's exactly what I did. I wasn't trying to succeed. Now let's start breaking down this fear of failure. The biggest cause of fear of failure is perfectionism, and it's very common with 92% of the Earth's population struggling with some type of perfectionism. Perfectionism, according to Oxford Languages, is refusal to accept anything short of perfection. You see, the body actually views perfectionism as a defense mechanism. It can be both a shield that protects us and limits us. So lots of people use the desire to be the best because their brains are trying to cover up the feeling of not being good enough. Their brains are telling them that if I'm the best, then I'm good enough. And if I do this and I'm not the best, then I fail. Now, in fact, perfectionism is so closely tied to fear of failure that 1/3 of people with perfectionism end up with a fear of failure. These unrealistic expectations are not often met, and this is what creates fear of failure. Remember when I said that fear of failure is generally caused by perfectionism, success, and negative self-talk? You may have been thinking, how does success lead to failure, or at least the fear of it? It's because success creates a good feeling. Let's think back to my soccer game. When my team scored that early goal, we got that good feeling. The feeling as if you can win no matter the odds. This feeling is something everyone's driven to achieve, because who doesn't want to succeed at something, right? This good feeling actually becomes a goal, and the body doesn't want this feeling to go away because of failure. But failure is inevitable, and eventually we fail. Now, the body feels as if it was stripped away of success, robbed of the good feeling. So in comes fear of failure. This fear of failure is now a behavioral reaction to the anticipation of negative consequences. The brain now focuses on preventing losses instead of accomplishing goals. The last major cause of fear of failure is negative self-talk. Negative self-talk is behind depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and so on. It is when you are overly critical with yourself and you are always focused on the bad. This way of thinking is often how fear of failure starts. Over time, our inner critics continue to be pessimistic, especially when we fail. For some people, this can fuel our desire to succeed, but for others, it actually decreases motivation. For example, during my soccer game, I wasn't in the right position. So as you know, my teammates started to get upset. I began to think, what am I doing? And I am not playing well at all. According to healthdirect.gov, negative self-talk can lower confidence and prevent desire to accomplish a goal. It can also keep you grounded so you start to think, I am not good at this, so I'm going to avoid trying. Now, let's wrap up my story. As the captain of my soccer team, my teammates follow my lead. I'm like a role model. So when I began to play poorly, so did my team. The opposition then seized advantage of our poor performance. And just like that, we were down 1. Then we were down by 2. As the referee blew the final whistle, all I could think about was how the outcome was on me. I stared at my cleats, as if they were the solution to my problem. So how can we get rid of our fear of failure and negative self-talk? We can start by noticing when we're being a self-critic, and we can try to think, would I say that to someone else? Also, we can try to recognize that no one is perfect, and quit thinking great isn't good enough. Lastly, we should understand that success creates a good feeling, and that the disappointment that comes out of failure is normal and actually expected. Because in the end, it doesn't matter whether you're scared to fail, you're a perfectionist, you struggle with negative self-talk, or none of it. We can all remember times when the possibility of failure prevented us from a goal. Failure is part of life. Albert Einstein once wrote, "A person who never made a mistake never tried anything new." Thank you.
We will now take a 10-minute break while our judges tally up the scores. We will present awards when they're finished. Thank you.
We will announce our runners-up first in no particular order. And then we will announce our top 5 after that. So our runners-up, first we have Sienna Rush. Next up, we have Charlie Marceau. You don't have to go that far. No, Sienna, come over here. You can stand like right here. There you go. Good, perfect. Okay. All right. Next, Logan Brown. All right. Up next, we have Zoe Ziegler. Evan Christie. Next is Allie Hamlin. Our next runner-up is Adriana Zoller. Lily Bassett. Next we have Avery Oliniak. Evan Graham is next. Avery Pelletier. Oh yeah, sorry, I just moved you that way. Now I'm going to move you this. That's all right. Sorry. Thanks, Logan. Cool. All right. Okay. We have a tie for 4th place. For all of our math people, this is statistically difficult. But our tie is between Avery Austin and Renee Mama. We did not anticipate a tie. Adjustments will be made. Okay. In 3rd place, we have Jamison Hardy. Second place is Leah Costa. Hey, Chloe. Chloe Towler's our first place winner this year. You guys stand still because Mr. Doherty is going to take another picture. Okay. All right. I'm going to hide right here. Good? Thank you to everybody who came. Thank you to our judges. Thank you for supporting this program every year. Have a good night.